everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma. This week, Kim the Geek, unfortunately, is not able to join us. The day that we had planned to record our latest episode, that was the day I decided to, for the first time in a long time, have more than 6 hours of sleep.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, I think it was like almost 12 hours of sleep. I woke up, I was like, oh my god, I haven't done that since I was a teenager. Man, but with that said, obviously we're here for another episode, and I have brought back Professor Aubrey.
Hi.
Yeah, I figured the last episode you were on is in our actual top 5 of most listened, downloaded episodes. So,
oh wow,
why not have you back on? You know, you did so great the first time.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Before we begin the show proper this week, there is one bit of house cleaning I want to take some time to talk about, and that was some comments I made last week. Yeah. Now, when we were discussing at one point vegans, I ended up referring to vegans as douchebags.
Oh, no.
Very, very immature. Mm-hmm. Very, very wrong. I personally do not believe all vegans are douchebags. I don't believe most vegans are douchebags. There are some, but a douchebag is a douchebag whether they eat meat or not. You know, and also too with my sense of humor, you're just beginning to discover this. Sometimes I can go a little bit over the top with my jokes. I compare it to like a bad guy wrestling manager or something like that, just saying something that you know is just patently ridiculous, but trying to sell it as if you absolutely believe it for the joke and whatnot. But anyway, like I said, I didn't want to give the impression that I think all vegans are douchebags, because that is simply not the case. So what I did as a way to make penance, I reached out to the person I would say is, for everybody I know, is the expert on everything veganism, and that's someone I mentioned on the show, Tracy Flynn. And yeah, we got a cat here making his presence felt. Tell everybody about the cat.
So that's Sherman. Sherman is 15 years old and does whatever he wants to.
Apparently.
Yeah. So he has this ritual of washing his hands by scratching the wall or whatever happens to be around. So that's what he's doing right now. So he's making sure his hands are very clean. Yeah,
I mean, we may discuss this, but who knows? They probably don't hear him or something like that.
Mm-hmm,
But I got distracted. But anyway, talked to my friend Tracy Flynn, and I got a recipe that with her permission, I'm going to share with the audience.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she calls it Tracy's Mountain Bean Chili. After I talk about it on the episode here, I am going to release it on Twitter, as well as our new Facebook group. If you are on Facebook and do a search for Friends Talking Nerdy, you'll be able to come across our group there. Tracy is a member, so if you like her recipe there, she's just a unique cat. I'll say, I mean that in the absolute best possible terms, because when she falls in love with something, she has to know everything about it. So the reason I say she's an expert on this is that she's a damn expert. You know? So if something like this is interests you and you want to hear some more, recipes and stuff from her, she'll be glad to tell you. But here is the recipe for Tracy's Mountain Bean Chili. You get 2 onions, you chop them up. You get 5 garlic cloves, you press or chop them. 1 teaspoon of chopped chili and adobo, whatever that means.
Adobo chili. Mm-hmm. It's a type of chili.
Okay.
It's delicious. Mm-hmm.
Chili most of the time is just in a can, so I don't know this stuff. You get 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a half a teaspoon of sea salt, a half a teaspoon of allspice. I don't know what allspice is, do you?
Yeah, it's like a little seed that has a particular flavor. It's called allspice, and you grind it up and put it in stuff, and it tastes. It's almost like a little sweet-ish. Like it sort of feels related to cinnamon and clove.
Okay. All right, so then you'll add an eighth of a teaspoon of cayenne or chipotle. You saute that. Once that's sauteed, and you can tell I'm a cook by just how I'm describing all this. Once it's sauteed, you're going to add a 14-ounce can of kidney beans, 14-ounce can of pinto beans, a 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, a quarter cup of water, and 1 beef bouillon cube. And by beef, we're talking about the vegan bouillon cubes. She uses Better Than Bouillon, non-beef, but there are other vegan brands out there. Then you let that simmer for 15 minutes. Then you got yourself some chili.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, she and one thing she did want me to make clear too is that, you know, being from Texas, she's from Texas. She wanted to point out that this is not Texas chili because there are beans in this chili, and apparently Texas chili there are no beans. So, and if you know, when it comes to people from Texas, you know, they know a couple things. One, they know how to disassemble and reassemble a handgun by the age of 5, and 2, they know their chili. So.
Oh, there's some good people who live in Texas who do not have guns or know how to assemble or disassemble.
I know. Another one of my jokes, you know. Let's talk about Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, goody.
Yeah. We go from chili to Harvey Weinstein. Ew. Not about him specifically now. It's about a comment I heard from his lawyer that I came across on Twitter, and I just want to talk about it more in the grand scheme of things, not necessarily related to Harvey Weinstein, because he's a slimy douchebag, and hopefully he'll get a heart attack at some point. You know, I think it,
or maybe he'll get sentenced to
that. Yeah, I mean, because I think it was Clarence Darrow who said it. It was a quote I heard once Robert McNamara died, and it was a column writer who gave the Clarence Darrow quote that I think is the absolute best, and that's, "I would never kill a man, but I've read many obituaries with great pleasure." You know, he would be on that list, but. Harvey Weinstein's lawyer came out and ultimately said that because of the Me Too movement, men are now going to be scared to ask women out on dates, and they're going to be scared to work with women. You all are so scary. Can you believe that? Yeah. Ridiculous comments to any sane human being, but it just makes me... you're a woman, obviously, so you'll be able to go a lot more in depth on this than I can. But is it really? Am I really my line of thinking really the exception to the norm of that women, gosh darn it, should be treated with respect? I mean, I just.
Well, I think what's strange about the comments is that they seem to what they're assuming is that that's a terrible thing, number one, right? That the idea that men's ability to speak to women how they would like to speak to women and to ask women out on dates is as important as women's safety in the workplace.
Yeah.
So there's like a huge assumption there already. And what he's trying to do is threaten men with change, and I think that there are lots of men out there that are like you and like other men that I know that don't consider it their right to ask women out or flirt with women or talk to women in sexual innuendo before those women have expressed a desire for you to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it assumes a world in which women can't voice their own desires, and that we're just waiting to be acted upon by whatever men happen to be around.
Yeah, that you're essentially property, you know, that it's not, you know, two individual human beings that may ultimately have a potential attraction towards each other that, you know, decide to openly talk about that attraction and work towards having some sort of a relationship or something like that. That's healthy, but I just don't get the logic that being a red-blooded heterosexual male and also being respectful to women are somehow two things that cannot coexist. I mean, what type of experiences have you dealt with over the years?
Oh,
that you would be willing to talk about.
Sure.
Sorry to throw that hammer in your...
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of women, and certainly for myself, I don't really know that I have any particular personal experiences that fit into what's going on with Me Too and Harvey Weinstein Weinstein in particular. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I haven't been in a sort of quid pro quo situation in a workplace. I think there are lots of women who have experienced that either in work or at school. Mm-hmm. And one thing after you mentioned that you were going to talk about this, one thing that I saw happened yesterday was that a local private school in Portland, Caitlin Gable School, released a report about the many instances where teachers had engaged in sexual relationships or romantic relationships with their female students, their female high school students.
Jeez.
So, and some of the women that talked to the Willamette Week, or actually I think it was the Oregonian, about their experiences, had confusion about, well, at the time I wanted to be in that relationship. Right, and obviously there's a huge power differential between a high school teacher and a high school student, mm-hmm. But also there's the male-female dynamic. But men's expression of power in the workplace and in those kind of power differential relationships results in women not necessarily knowing
when they're being victimized.
Well,
or taken advantage of, or...
It's just real confusing. It's just really confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's the same kind of confusion that people can experience when they're having non-consensual sexual contact, which is that your body does whatever your body does, right? Your body responds in some way.
Right.
And usually it might indicate to whoever you were with that you were like into that or having a good time. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of similar on an emotional level where it's like maybe those girls, the girls sort of recalled like, I felt special because this man wanted to be in a relationship with me.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some weird emotional dynamics that happen in those types of relationships.
Yeah, and it's important to have these conversations, and it's important especially for men to listen to women's stories about this, because empathy at the end of the day is going to be what is going to cause change, but we have to work at essentially changing the culture, I guess. I mean, we live in a patriarchal culture here in the States, if not around the entire world, for millennia. And, we're in a spot now to where, it seems like women are finally getting a chance to tell their stories, and some men are taking the time to actually listen this time. And I see things like a former coworker who is abroad studying. If I had to describe her, she's like the living version of Carol Kane's character in the movie Scrooged.
Oh, wow.
Just, sweetness and sunshine, but also a badass, you know. And she recently had her phone stolen, and which happens to everybody. And I used to work with her at Apple, so she's one hell of a smart person. I mean, again, studying overseas and the political climate we're in today, being able to do that. You're not going to have my grades and go overseas to learn and whatnot. But I saw when she talked about it on her social media page that a couple of guys would comment with very basic just saving your information 101, that if they realized that she worked at Apple, they would know that, that's something you would know the moment you walk in the door for the first time. I mean, that's just very basic common knowledge stuff. And first guy who wrote it, I could have let that slide, because if, it's not like I go off and tell absolutely everybody, where I used to work and what my knowledge level is and whatnot. But, he said the basic saving 101, and then she said, oh, I know all this, and, I used to work at Apple, blah, blah, blah. And then another guy did the same thing. And she had the same response, and me, I'm like, come on, what is, one, you need to get your reading comprehension tested, to be able to, because she very clearly stated that, she, ultimately knows what she's doing, and I can attest to that for a fact. She's one smart cookie. But two, it's just disrespectful. It's just, it felt like that. Maybe I'm overreading it, and maybe she would laugh at me for having the reaction that I did, but it felt like that the guys were like patting her on the head, it's gonna be okay. Have you done this very basic thing? And acting like they're telling her the secrets to life.
This is a classic example of mansplaining that you're describing, Tim.
Yeah.
Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
I had it pointed out after I'm aware. I'm aware of it.
And that happens all the time, right? Like this assumption that women don't know what we're doing, and that we need very basic information conveyed to us.
In the simplest of terms as well, which infuriated me. I mean, I ultimately, replied to that message, not directing anything. I made it a positive, and, that made me feel good, and I hope that made her feel good, because she did use the laugh emoji, for the text, so hopefully it went over well. But it just makes me upset to see women continually disrespected like that. And very blanket statement, very simple thing to say, but when you see it happening over and over again, and when you have female autonomy being tested again and again, I mean, because I think the Me Too movement is part of that. Women shouldn't be coerced into using their bodies to get a promotion at work, to get a movie role, to pass a test at school. And men need to essentially realize that women aren't these receptacles for their junk. It's not. I don't know. It
definitely makes me really happy that my work environment is all female. So my boss is female. Everybody that I work with basically is female, and that makes a kind of environment where you don't have to worry about this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It feels far away from me. The workplace stuff at this point.
Is this heaven?
Mm-hmm. No, it feels like heaven to have, and I've only had it this one other time in my life, a sort of female-run, female. It just so happens, right, that everybody involved in the organization was female for a time, and it was really amazing how it feels to work in that kind of environment, and then the men came back into that workplace
and totally fucked it up.
And it felt pretty awful again pretty quickly.
Now, speaking of workplace, I mean, my philosophy is, I mean, when it comes to, I mean, workplace crushes happen. I mean, that's just a fact. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with getting a crush on somebody, because it's just, human biology. If you see somebody that you feel is physically attractive, you're going to get a little bit of a crush. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But in my opinion, I think unless you are absolutely 100% dead certain that if you dated this person and it ended but it ended on a positive note, that you both could, go your separate ways and still be respectful to each other, attempting to do anything with a coworker is not the smartest thing in the world.
I mean, I agree with that, and I think that that's a pretty high expectation that you just laid out, that like before you even go out with the person, that you're convinced that no matter what happened in that relationship, you would be able to continue to treat each other, or to like not be upset. Like, I think if you date somebody that you work with, you're essentially acknowledging that you may need to leave that workplace.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly come across people at Apple. Apple was a little notorious for the coworkers kind of,
I think there are lots of workplaces like that.
And yeah. I mean, Apple's, not unique in that bunch, but, people were definitely, it was a soap opera in a lot of ways. But still, even with that, it's like it just boggles my mind. I'm sorry. I just don't get the logic that, being attracted to somebody means that you have a right to them, that you can disrespect them as long as your pleasures are fulfilled in the grand scheme of things. And I'm sorry, I just don't get the logic in that. So hearing stuff like the jackass lawyer for Harvey Weinstein, I don't get it. And but it's a conversation that needs to be had, as you can tell from listening so far. Me with the stammering and everywhere, it's not an easy topic to fully articulate, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's important.
I agree, absolutely. It's important to talk about, even though it's difficult to talk about, and sometimes we're not quite sure what we want to or need to say about it. But just acknowledging that women's experience in the workplace and in school is different and has been different, and that women have been very often disrespected and very often put in positions where their safety and their ability to do their job or their ability to learn is put in jeopardy at the whim of somebody else, just because they want to be able to articulate that I think that you're cute, or I want to go out with you. Like, you can think that people are cute and want to go out with them and never ever say anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, look at me and Scarlett Johansson. One thing I would, I think it's important for guys to keep in mind as well. I mean, speaking of Scarlett Johansson, I mean, nobody's going to deny the fact that she's a beautiful woman, when she's dressed up like Black Widow, my God. But how many guys have come to her over the years and said something just, oh my God, that was so hot. And just said lewd stuff after lewd stuff after lewd stuff, just complete strangers. That would be fucking annoying over time. I mean, annoying, you would feel like, do these people really like me for me? Am I just, a slab of meat? And just think of it from the other side. How would you like to hear if you were a, beautiful person? People after people coming at you and just only commenting on physical beauty. Physical beauty over time fades. I mean, when Scarlett Johansson's 80 years old, she's probably going to look like me. But if she's a good person overall, that's ultimately what's more important. But anyway, you have some songs you want to talk about.
Oh, hey, yeah. So,
what a transition.
To totally change the subject. So when you asked me to be on the show, I was trying to think of, what would I like to talk about? And I thought, it's wintertime. It's about to be super snowy here in Portland. Mm-hmm. People are going to get snowed into their houses. And what is better when you're snowed in than some really sad songs to make you appreciate how truly awesome your life is in comparison?
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of sad songs. My favorite kinds of songs are sad songs.
As Elton John said, they say so much.
They do say so much. So turn them on is really what I have to say.
Okay.
And I have a collection of 6 of what I think are some of the best sad songs for the wintertime.
Okay.
And I want to share those with the listeners. And I have actually created a Spotify playlist that I will share with you or send to you, and that we can somehow put.
We'll put it on the Facebook group as well as on Twitter. I mean,
Awesome.
You're in the Facebook group and you follow me on Twitter, so it's just a matter of linking it.
Right. So here we go. Top 6 songs sad songs for a cold winter day. The first one is a song called "The Night We Met" by Lord Huron, which is a band that is relatively new. And it's off the album Strange Tales. It's a song about wishing you could go back to that moment that you met someone so that you could avoid all of the pain and heartache that subsequently came from that relationship.
I've never been there.
Oh no, none of us have been, right?
Never, yeah.
The next song is by Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos, which is more of a 90s emo-y band. Have you ever heard of them?
No, but it's... Who's that? What is the name of that group that does the kid show in Nickelodeon?
No idea.
Oh my god. Keep talking, I'll find the group.
So the song that I picked from them, really any of the Margot and the Nuclear So-and-So's songs could go onto a list of the best sad songs. But I picked Broad Ripple is Burning, which is, another song about regret, really, and really beautifully done. And there are like 4 different versions of it. So I picked the version of it that I think is the most sort of somber in a moving way.
The Aquabats.
The Aquabats.
Yeah, just the name of it just reminded me of the Aquabats, and probably they have nothing to do with each other, and they probably don't sound anything alike. But I just think of Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos just reminds me of like a late 70s, early 80s Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Yeah, they're really just like an emo band from the 90s. They're from the early 2000s. Okay, the next song is by Julia Jacklin. Have you ever heard of Julia Jacklin? She is amazing. She has a very unique voice, and she plays guitar, and she's a singer-songwriter. And she has this great song that is very sad called "Good Guy," and the theme of that song is it's okay sometimes if you are feeling really lonely, it's okay for somebody to lie to you and tell you that they love you even if they don't, which I don't actually agree with, like in life, but the song is sort of a woman in that position just wanting to hear that someone loves her and that the guy can still be a good guy even if he lies to her.
Well, it sounds like she's talking about the benefits that you can get from something like a quickie, a one-night stand, a friend with benefits type of deal, which in my opinion can happen, but just I get that mindset though. Sometimes life will just kick you down repeatedly, and just having that one special moment with somebody, even if it's just one moment that will never happen again, sometimes will just make the day go by better for you.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. You're the professor.
I mean, absolutely. I think that those can be really nice experiences. I don't know if that's exactly what she's talking about in the song, I guess.
Okay. Obviously, I have
you
not
haven't
heard
listened
it.
to the song.
I have not.
So
I'm just speculating.
how could you possibly know?
I do. I'm sorry.
The next song is by Big Thief. Have you heard of Big Thief?
Nope.
They're an awesome 5-piece with a woman singer and guitar player, and they do a song called Masterpiece, which is they're a rock and roll band really, and this is a solo version of that song, so it is like more somber and acoustic. Really great song about dealing with loss and repeated loss. The next song is by Johnny Flynn. Any idea who Johnny Flynn is?
Nope.
So Johnny Flynn is an English singer, songwriter, also actor and director. And he has a million good sad songs, including this one, which is Heart Sunk Hank. And, like all of these songs, it has something to do with love and loss.
Now, the Hank part, is that referring to Hank Williams being like country song, or?
No, I don't think so. It comes from the line in the song, "This one goes out west to Heart Sunk Hank." I don't really know who Heart Sunk Hank is.
Okay. Yeah, and it wasn't a knock if it was in reference to that, because I know sometimes there are plenty of country songs, at least, that even in the title will name drop other country artists.
For sure.
Yeah. So I didn't know if that was a case here. So
I don't know. And then the sixth song, which is sort of a bonus song, is "Nothing Arrived" by the Villagers, and I really like the acoustic version of this again. So the sort of live acoustic version of this song. The Villagers typically have more of a poppy feel, but this song is about sort of, if your expectations are that nothing will fill your life, then that's an expectation that's going to be fulfilled. And so it's a little bit about sort of just accepting whatever comes your way, and that that's going to make you happier than having expectations of certain outcomes.
Okay.
So sort of like detaching from outcome is how I hear this song. And it's all of these songs to me are positive but sad.
Well, the beauty of a good sad song, I mean, I've talked about it on previous episodes, like when one song I can think of when we first started doing the album reviews is from the Rolling Stones, called "Worried About You." And I related a personal story about how, there was somebody I was dating, and it went bad, in terms of just the relationship went south, nothing worse than that, but, feelings were hurt and whatnot. And I had received a text message from this person basically stating, you're not going to be in my life anymore. And, just hearing that "Worried About You" song, it was just so damn sad. And I was crying. It was like late at night. I was walking to a bus stop. But the beauty of that song too is that it allows you to get those feelings out. A good sad song allows you to process that grief. And especially if you're someone like me who does have trouble, talking about, really intense emotions like that, a good sad song is, invaluable to getting past whatever is keeping you stagnated, whether it is, losing a relationship, for instance, or, something else. Just popping on a good sad song, crying. Like, think of another song too from Waylon Jennings. We were listening to it earlier, "The Wurlitzer Prize." Where he talks about just being at a bar and just putting quarter after quarter in the jukebox, listening to a song that him and a former lover appreciated, just to think back on those times together. So sad, but to your point, there's also a positiveness to that, because it's like, again, you're allowing those emotions to essentially escape and not linger and, build up and turn into something negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that I have similar experience with sad songs in that they allow me to access emotions that are hard for me to just call up. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I love sad songs. And in fact, I was going to do another playlist, and I did do another playlist, and we can put it up as well, of sort of more romancy songs. Like, what if you were snowed in with someone that you care about? Like, what songs might you listen to
Let's get it on.
Right, a classic. But then as I made this playlist of sort of sexier songs, I realized that they were all super sad as well.
Yeah.
So my love of sad music sort of permeates all all types of music.
And if you think about it, with most love songs, there's really a huge tinge of sadness in most love songs. I mean, even in, like, one of my favorites, I've Got You Under My Skin, the Frank Sinatra version, written by Cole Porter, arranged by Nelson Riddle, the way Sinatra does it. Based on the title, you would think it's 100% positive, but it's really not. It's a guy... I say guy just because Sinatra's singing it, and I'm assuming Sinatra interprets songs. He's an interpretive singer, so I think he becomes a character when he's singing, and I just pictured it as a guy essentially convincing himself that I don't want to love this person, but I just have to. And there's a tinge of sadness in that as well. There aren't that many really absolute positive love songs out there that are just happy. And I can think of, like, Robert Palmer has a great one called She Makes My Day. Really well done. If you haven't heard it, definitely recommend you checking it out. But it is, from first to last, completely positive. Nothing about losing a relationship, nothing about let's capture like Lukenbach, Texas from Waylon Jennings, in terms of let's sell everything and be like we were in the old days, so we're not fighting anymore. It's just about, I love you, let's just celebrate the fuck out of each other. And there aren't many like that.
Yeah, most good stories need some kind of conflict or some kind of change. So, to the extent songs are stories, but even like love movies about love, rom-coms, like there's always some bad stuff in there, some sadness in there before you get to the good stuff.
True, and that's life. That's if everything was great all the time, would we know it to be great?
Exactly. You got to take the good with the bad. You got to take the dark with the light. Balance the force, Luke.
No, I was thinking you take the good, you take the bad.
Take them
both, and there you have
the facts of life.
Yeah, okay, you got it. Yeah. Well, now that I did a reference on television, let's do another segue talking about television.
Okay, awesome.
All right. I was watching a YouTube video the other day of an old wrestling classic storyline. And, I showed you bits and pieces of that video before we started here. But I make no qualms about the fact that I'm a huge wrestling fan. Been a fan since I was a kid. But that business is amazing. If you just look at the history of the storylines that are involved and how they kind of weave in and out of each other, and just how insane they are if you just actually talk it out. You get a lot of I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, just thinking about some of the over the top stuff that happens, because again, if it happened in real life, people would more than likely be going to jail, whereas if it happens on a pro wrestling show, if like a performer like Steve Austin back in the day comes out driving a beer truck to the ring and then sprays Vince McMahon with a fire hose of beer, if that happened at my job, someone would be going to jail. But for Steve Austin, that's high ratings. But I was thinking back to, it was one of the first big storylines I saw after I started watching wrestling again, because in '96 I kind of drifted away from it for a while. And if anybody who was a fan during that era would understand why, just because it was horrible in '96. Just you had characters like Duke the Dumpster Droese, a wrestling garbage man. You can't...
Hard to get behind that character, really.
You can't, yeah. Because at the end of the day, wrestling is kind of like an action movie in the sense that it's telling a story, but it's telling it in a heightened reality, so you can get away with a lot of stuff that you would not get away with in UFC, for instance, but it also has to make some sense. If that makes any sense at all. And you're like, no, it doesn't. If this were a paper you were writing for me, Tim, you'd get an F. But anyway, in the spring of '99, Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin were in the middle of their blood feud. They were just enemies, because the previous year when Stone Cold became the WWF champion, Vince McMahon, the owner of the WWF, made it his mission to stop Steve Austin in any way that he could.
Do we know why? Do we know why Steve Austin is hated by Vince McMahon?
Yes, because in storyline-wise, Vince did not see Stone Cold as what he pictured as the champion. He did not like the blue-collar aspect. And just other things. He pictured someone more photogenic, someone like The Rock. The Rock, actually, for a while. The Rock was WWF champion, but, when The Rock was facing off against Stone Cold, The Rock was a bad guy for a bit. So it was all about, Vince McMahon being the evil boss, telling an employee, I don't like you, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure your life is a living hell. And then Stone Cold flips it by, going after the boss and defeating the boss. Now, it's a lot of the benefits of these storylines for fans, especially, is that essentially you can live vicariously through Stone Cold. If like me in my 20s, I was working at a crappy gas station, and my boss was a jackass. Even in May of 2000, World Championship Wrestling came to town for an episode of Monday Nitro, and I ended up writing a sign that says, it was my boss's name, can suck my balls. But when I rewatched that video on the WWE Network, and when it aired initially too, TNT, the station that it aired on, blurred that out.
Oh, that's so sad.
So I couldn't show, that to my boss. But anyway, in '99, Stone Cold and McMahon were having their feud. WrestleMania 15 happened, and Stone Cold ended up winning the championship against The Rock. But there was another storyline that was starting around that same time as well, and it was involving The Undertaker. The Undertaker came one day to the ring. There was an Inferno match going on, the stupidest idea for a match ever, where they set up these contraptions around the ring that will shoot out fire. And the goal, the way you win that match is set your opponent on fire.
Yeah, it seems dangerous.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But The Undertaker came out during one of these matches with a teddy bear.
Oh.
He had a teddy bear, and then he set the teddy bear on fire in front of Vince McMahon. And McMahon, not known for his subtle acting, and you saw that brief video today, and I'm sure you've probably seen a few things over time. Just was like, just wailing, and just you found out that teddy bear was owned by his daughter Stephanie.
Oh.
Yeah, his daughter, who in '99 she was just out of college and just starting to essentially learn the family business. Now, over time, that teddy bear ended up becoming that was child's play compared to what happened next, because there was a pay-per-view that happened, and the Undertaker made a threat against Stephanie, and then McMahon told her to hide in a limo. But who was driving the limo? The Undertaker. He kidnapped her because there was a great scene where like the front window opens on the limo, and then the Undertaker turns and goes, "Where to, Stephanie?" And then she starts screaming, and then she got kidnapped. And then what happened? Again, talking this out, it makes it more funny to me. So the next week, what happened? Now, the Undertaker was head of a faction. Now, a faction wrestling is a group of guys that get together for one common goal, and his faction was called the Ministry of Darkness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Ministry. And what he ended up trying to do with Stephanie is he had Stephanie tied to a big version of the Undertaker symbols. The Undertaker has a symbol that they essentially use for marketing purposes more than anything. But they had her tied to the symbol, brought her down to the ring, and attempted to have the Undertaker's manager, Paul Bearer, marry Stephanie and the Undertaker together. But Stone Cold Steve Austin saved the day.
How so?
He came, and just as the Undertaker was about to, kiss his bride, Stone Cold's music hits. He comes out and starts giving everybody stunners and, throwing them out of the ring. And then Vince McMahon, up to this point, the storyline has been making you more sympathetic to Vince. He's coming out, he's untying his daughter, and he's thanking Stone Cold, but Stone Cold doesn't trust it.
Well, sure, because they've been
enemies for so long. Yeah. So during this time, it was after this that there was talk of a higher power.
Greater power.
A greater power. They mixed and matched that on the show. I mean, they would call it higher power, greater power, whatever. And ultimately, they got to a point where they were going to reveal the higher power.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a big deal for, weeks. And because, like, the week beforehand on an episode of Sunday Night Heat, the higher power ended up coming out at one point. And did a brief little, because like Stone Cold was tied up in the ropes and the higher power got up close to him and then lifted his hood just a little bit so only Stone Cold could see who it was. And Stone Cold was upset because he knew. And then the week of the episode where they did the reveal, the higher power comes out in robes. He's walking slowly to the ring. For a while, you think it'll be Vince McMahon's son, Shane McMahon, because during this time, Shane McMahon was against his father as well, and actually his faction, the corporation, joined forces with the ministry, and they became the corporate ministry. Ooh. Yeah, but it wasn't Shane, and they had a little what they call a swerve in the business. Shane said, Vince, come on out and reveal who the higher power is, and then there was a video message of Vince going, I can see all I need to see right here. And then what happens when the higher power throws the hood of his robe off? It's Vince McMahon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he's the most iconic lines, the funniest line. It's like, it's me, Austin. It was me all along, Austin. Then he talks about, his family buying it and, that he would do anything to put Stone Cold Steve Austin in his place. And then something that's even more funny today occurred. Vince's daughter Stephanie and former Trump cabinet official Linda McMahon come out. Linda used to be the CEO of the WWE, and then she ran for Congress and failed there. But then Trump, that nonsense happened, and she was the head of the Small Business Association. But she came out and said that, she convened a meeting of the board of directors and resigned as CEO.
Yeah.
But not before she picked her successor. And that was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh my gosh.
Now just imagine, they were not a publicly traded company at this particular time, but imagine if you were an investor seeing the CEO of a company coming out and doing what she did, and then you have Vince McMahon, the owner of the company, publicly proclaiming that he had his daughter kidnapped and, tried to marry her off to somebody else. It would make me leery as an investor to want to invest in that company, even if I knew it was fake. It's just like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, it's interesting how their real families are all involved. Like, it seems like that's not uncommon for there to be, like, father-son, right? But so Vince McMahon's whole family is sort of represented in this storyline.
Yep.
And they're like his genuine family members.
They are. And a funny thing is, later that year, his daughter Stephanie, actually, because Vince McMahon by the end of the year was a good guy again, but Stephanie actually joined forces with a bad guy by the name of Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Mm-hmm. And that storyline ended up becoming a reality because when she was paired with Hunter, they were on TV, husband and wife, but they really fell for each other. Oh. So this higher power storyline was the seed that gave him a son-in-law in real life. But
there you go.
Wrestling is ridiculous in a lot of ways, but it's also fun. It's
Yes, it is both ridiculous and super fun.
Yeah. All right. Album of the week. Again, next week we'll be discussing Kim's choice of Weird Al Yankovic's In 3D. But since we got Aubrey here, last time she picked an album. So this week I decided to pick an album. And that album was not the top choice in a poll that I put on our Facebook group, because for the Facebook group, that poll was directed more towards the show with Canton, in terms of what I'm going to pick next. But this was one of the choices, being that it was not on top of the particular poll in question. I thought, why not go with this? It's one of my favorite Pete Townshend albums, called Psychoderelict. Now, you've heard it a couple of times.
Yep.
What are your general thoughts?
Well, it improved significantly on the second listen. The first listen, it was a little far out. It's a little bit like wrestling, really, in that there's this melodrama happening in the album. So for folks who don't know, it's a concept album that features a radio drama throughout the album. And that's a little strange and challenging to listen to. The second time I listened to it, I was able to focus a little bit more on the actual songs, and some of them I liked. So
yeah. Now, this album came out in 1993. It's officially Pete Townshend's last solo album. I think he's gone on record stating that due to the sales or lack thereof for this album, he's probably not going to make another solo album. Honestly, it does make more sense for him at this point in his career. If he's going to continue, why not make the most money out of it? And as evidenced last November with the new release from The Who, write music for The Who. But again, this album is one of my favorites. It has a lot of great songs on there, including one that probably would fit on your list of sad songs. And to your point as well, it does have it's presented as a radio play, and the music is kind of there to accentuate that story. Now, I don't want to necessarily go into the story beat by beat here, but we can, as we review the songs, kind of go into it. The cliff notes are an old 60s rock star in the 90s goes back and looks at some of his old material from the 70s, and his manager, with the help of a journalist, finds a way to convince him to be introspective in public, as they put it. And again, there's a lot more going on in a lot of ways that it is kind of a convoluted storyline, just because the audio drama part isn't really given room to breathe. What would have been nice is if they released the album with just the music and then had a second disc that came with it with the entire audio drama. That may have been better, in my opinion. But anyway, let's go down the tracks point by point. First song on the album, English Boy. What'd you think?
So it was the sort of patriotic rock song about how awesome it is to be English, which... I'm not that attracted to patriotism right now, so I didn't like what the song was about, and I found that it was just kind of a non-distinguished rock song.
Well, I get that. For me, if you think of this as kind of what he did with Tommy or Quadrophenia with The Who, this song is kind of like an overture that you would get like in a Broadway play. To me, the even though Townsend is singing it, I picture this as the main character of the story, Ray High. I picture this, as Ray High singing it more than anything, if that makes sense. It's not Townsend's best song ever, but one of the reasons I like this album, and overall the albums I generally like from the artists that I like, don't necessarily have the songs that I like most on there. What I value more from an artist is, from first song to last, does it keep me glued to listening to that entire song? Now, like the Rolling Stones, for instance, like Tattoo You has Start Me Up, a classic. Waiting on a Friend, a classic. But not all the songs on that album are really good. Whereas, a couple albums back, they had the Some Girls album. From first song to last, classic. You can listen to that all the way through. Emotional Rescue, you can do the same thing there. And I think with this album here, it's kind of the same way. So a lot of the tracks won't ever be compared to some of Townshend's best, but it's still a fun song to just kind of have in the car, kind of jacked up. I'm an English boy, I was brought up right, type of deal. It's just energetic, it's fun, it gets you in the mood for what you're going to listen to.
Interesting.
All right, the next song. Now, in this album, too, for instance, one thing I forgot to mention is that the story in question is kind of based on his real life, because Townshend, as we've discussed in the show in the past, when we talked about the album Who's Next, had plans for The Who to come up with a concept that he called Lifehouse. And what this album, Psychoderelict, is doing is kind of satirically looking back at his past. And you were going to say something? Oh, okay. But what he did with this album is bring up some old demos that he did back in the 70s when he was coming up with the Lifehouse project. And the next track here, Meher Baba M3, is one of those demos. What did you think?
Well, so let me ask you this: are all the Meher Baba songs? So there are several of them on the album. Are they all demos from the 70s?
Yes, but from what I understand, some of them did have some tweaks added on when this album was made,
Gotcha.
Which not unheard of.
Right.
But it is essentially from those sessions that he came up with in the 70s.
These were my favorite tracks on the album. Absolutely, all of them were my favorite tracks on the album, which is a little bit odd because they're all pretty much instrumental, which is not generally what I'm into. But I found that all of these tracks felt more timeless than the rest of the tracks. Mm-hmm. So some of the tracks had a very 80s feel, early 90s feel to them, where you could place them in time. And all of these Meher Baba tracks just sort of felt like you didn't necessarily, you could listen to them today, you could listen to them in the 70s, and they would be awesome little ditties to listen to.
Agreed. One critique I do have on this album is that I do think that releasing it in 1993 did not do it any sort of favors. I mean, because that's, I believe the year before is when Nevermind from Nirvana hit. So the birth of grunge, everything was changing. And this album, if it had debuted in 87 or 88, would have probably have been accepted a lot more.
Yeah, would have maybe spawned a movie. I don't know. I just imagine the characters like definitely wearing 80s clothes, like big what do you call it? Shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Really big hair.
Hairspray and everything.
Hairspray. Yeah.
Yeah. It's for the Meher Baba M3, the first one. Would I listen to just that audio track on its own, just the music on its own? I probably wouldn't, but I did like how it kind of accentuated the radio play aspect. And the engineer, the producer on the album did a really good job of kind of making the music work at kind of hiding some of the deficiencies of the radio play, since the radio play did not have much real estate in order to play with. But and also to your point, I think if you listen to a Pete Townshend solo album and then you listen to The Who, it's really two different types of songs. I mean, solo Pete Townshend, a lot of times, especially his early work, was a lot more wordy than I like. Like when we were discussing the Neutral Milk Hotel, the album. One of my complaints was that the singer songwriter was just having fun putting in as much words as he could, and Pete Townshend in his previous solo albums was definitely guilty of that, whereas in a lot of the songs on this album were a lot more radio friendly, I guess. But again, the instrumentals here did have that more timeless feel, because obviously they do have that connection to The Who. All right, the next song, Let's Get Pretentious. What'd you think?
Just the concept of the song, it was a decent song, decent like melody, and certainly the instrumentation and all that fine. The lyrics were really annoying to me, so I didn't love this song.
Okay. For me, my notes, I said it was kind of a great radio type of song. You know, just something that you can have on in the background without devoting too much thought to, and still kind of enjoy. It does have that kind of upbeat tempo that I like. The one thing I didn't care for is that this is one instance where I thought the dialogue from the radio play kind of dragged the song down. You know, and because a lot of times Ray would, pontificate about the roles of an artist and whatnot, and it just like, shut up. I mean, because the lyrics, because it's like Ray's speech during this was essentially mirrored in the song itself, and the song should have essentially been the one that pulled the heavy lifting. So enjoyable, but forgettable. That's how I would put it. The next one, we have another instrumental here, Meher Baba M4.
Loved this one. Heavy synth in this song, but really nice groove, and I just really liked it a lot. I could definitely listen to this.
Yeah, this one, another instance of you can. I picked up kind of this demo here kind of inspired, in my opinion, the Who song "Who Are You." You know, and you can definitely hear those elements there. Again, it is not the instrumental track of "Who Are You," but any artist, when they're, whether it's a writer, a songwriter, a musician, whatever, their initial idea doesn't always sound like what the final product is going to be. It's a whole process. It evolves, and this song definitely had those elements from "Who Are You." Again, enjoyable. I don't know if I would go out of my way to listen to just this music and the music alone, but for what it did with the album, I really enjoyed it. Early Morning Dreams, the next song.
So this is where they sort of start talking about the life experience grid, or sort of more of the what did you call it? The life experience.
Lifehouse?
Yeah, Lifehouse. This seems to be the song where they're sort of talking a lot about that, and this idea that you can control, that they will control for you the media that you consume so that you can only be happy. So whatever is going to make you happy, they figure it out, and that's what they're sort of feeding you. In terms of the music, I thought it was kind of Cat Stevens-y-esque. It had a little jangly acoustic guitar thing happening. They're talking about utopia, and the music seems to try to go along with that. This sort of everything's okay, and you don't need to worry about anything. So it was enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, this, I think, this is one track that if it were released in 5 years previous, would have gotten a lot more play than it did. Just the song itself, not taking the dialogue from the radio play into account here. Again, I'm not going to say it's Townshend's best work ever, but it's catchy. And for being for a song on the radio or something that could have popped up on MTV, this is a really good song for that type of deal. I do think that this is the part of the radio play, I called it an exposition orgasm, where there was just so much going on that they were trying to feed you that it was just like, just stop already. I want to get back to the music. One other thing about the song that I did love is that the harmonies at the end, were kind of interweaving different lyrics together, and they did a really good job of that. I like that. All right, the next song, I Want That Thing.
Yeah, so this is a bluesy. Pete is singing with a gravelly voice, and I found it pretty boring, pretty milquetoast, shall we say.
Yeah, this is one that I don't particularly care for. As far as the song itself, there were some elements where he was kind of mixing in different synthesizer loops together, and it just felt like a mishmash more than anything. It didn't flow well. The only real thing that really stuck out that I liked on this song was there's a character in the radio play called Ruth Streeting. She's a rock critic, and she's really, she steals the show. Let's put it that way. I like it when she's there because she's sarcastic, she's witty, she's funny. You actually end up caring for her character by the end, just because she can be, so sarcasm heavy. And I thought, if you listen to this song, you're probably going to enjoy her more than the song itself. All right, the next track, "Outlive the Dinosaur."
I didn't care anything about this song, and I found it repetitive and not compelling in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it better than I Want That Thing, the previous track, but this was forgettable. I did write that that the bass on the song was really good. Kind of a simple bass beat, yet powerful for that. But again, this is another instance to where the radio play dialogue was kind of just a little more pretentious than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Pete is definitely guilty of being pretentious at times. That was the beauty of the Who, the fact that the other members of the band could kind of temper his pretentious urges at times. But again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad one, but it's forgettable. This is not one that's ever going to be on the best of Pete Townshend type of collections or anything like that.
No way.
All right, the next song, it's the demo of the song "Flame."
And so this has a lot to do with the radio play, in that this is the demo that is a song that he wrote that is being sung by the woman that he's interacting with. So she is singing this demo song, and there's lots of radio play happening over the top of it, so it's kind of hard to pay much attention to the song in this
and
version.
This track in particular is not the full song. The full song does come later in the album. As far as the song itself, I dug it. It is a product of its time. I think if it had been, again, released 5 years previous, I could picture someone like Celine Dion singing this song and, having a hit with it. Mm-hmm. But as far as the radio play aspect of it, with Ray High at the end talking about his love for the reporter who is ultimately, at the beginning of the play trying to screw him over.
Mm-hmm. And that he knew about it all the time, I think is this when he says that?
No, that comes a little bit later, but this is the part where you're like, come on. Again, it boils down, a lot of story coherence had to be sacrificed just because the radio play did not have as much real estate on the album as it should have if they were going to tell this story, but is what it is. Now, the next song, I would say, is one of Pete Townshend's best, Now and Then. What'd you think? I
really enjoyed the song. It's a nice song. I like the harmonica. Pete's voice here is that sort of classic falsetto-y Pete Townshend at the beginning, which I enjoy. And it's just a nice love song about how you don't get to control who you fall in love with, which is absolutely true.
True. This is by far one of my favorite Pete Townshend songs ever. The opening line, "Now and then you see a soul and you fall in love and you can't do a thing about it." Very much true for me a lot of times. The other part of the song too is for the longest time, we were talking about this earlier, how this song has meant different things to me over, different periods. For the longest time, I ignored the part where he was talking about a lost love. and just how experiences, I want to be careful how I word this, experiences have made me appreciate how that opening, the now and then you see a soul and you fall in love, you can't do a thing about it. You have to, the negative experiences that can come with a relationship, you have to be able to, it's okay to embrace that feeling you get when you're with somebody that you just meet and the attraction's going, sparks are flying, but you gotta be mindful of the fact that you gotta take it slow, because the opening, the chorus is essentially implying that the person in question just fell in love and went gaga head over heels over that person, and everybody's done that, but it's not always healthy. Sure, it can lead to relationships that last a long, long time, but more often than not, when, it's been my experience, when you do have that fall over, head over heels in love with somebody, those tend to kind of implode rather quickly. So, yeah, so it's again something I would say would belong on your list of sad songs. It has, but it's more of a realistic love song, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I didn't find it particularly sad, either in melody or in lyrically.
Mm-hmm. Well, sad, I mean, in terms of the breakup. I mean, he does talk about, part of the song is where he talks about falling in love with someone that was younger than him, and then, having doubts that this person would ever want to be with him long term, and just there's some sad elements to it. It's not, but to your point, it's not a weepy George Jones type of sad. Mm-hmm. It's just more of a reflection than anything else. You can reflect on something that is sad without that sad being the most sad thing in the entire universe, if you get my point.
It did not give me a sad feeling listening to it.
But that's the beauty of songs like this, though, that that they can, like the song I told you about, "Worried About You" from the Rolling Stones, sad, but with the way the music's played, it kind of uplifts you as well and helps get those emotions out. So that's how I would put this song here. So, all right, the next track, "I Am Afraid."
It reminded me of a Phil Collins song. Like, it had a very definite late 80s, early 90s pre-Nirvana forgettableness to it.
Again, I'm Afraid is not Pete Townshend's best work. What I liked about it is that it does capture, the notes I put is that it captures that vulnerability you have when you first realize you're falling with someone, how you realize just how much you're opening yourself up and how scary that can be. Yeah, but to your point as well, again, this album just, it should not have been released in 1993. It was a crime that this album was released in 1993 because it was ignored, and if it had been released a few years earlier, it could have gotten a little more play. Now, the next track, "Don't Try to Make Me Real."
Yeah, so I found this lyrically to be like really self-indulgent and made me want to kind of smack him around. Particularly contrasted with the instrumentation in the song, which is just like so epic. Like, it's kind of an epic-y feeling from the melody and the instrumentation. Feels very epic to me, but the lyrics are like so whiny. And it's like, if you can put together this song, why are you whining about, like, you can't really feel your feelings? So it annoyed me.
Well, I get that, and I don't disagree with that. I think what he was aiming for is kind of a comment of how it could potentially be for a celebrity in his position, how it, how he is commenting on how artists have to essentially build a persona more than anything, and you don't want to make that artist into a real person, because then, who knows what'll happen. But, to me, it was catchy. I liked it a little bit more. It's forgettable, but I don't know. I thought it was okay. Let's put it that way. The next track opens up with some spanking, literally, called "Predictable."
This is my least favorite song on the album. It sort of opens the radio play is in a weird place where there's some spanking going on in the radio play, and then there's this song that is sort of full of sexual innuendo, 1987 era, right? And so from a modern perspective, where songs actually just talk about fucking when they're about fucking now, right? You don't have to say things like your love is erectable, or I'm gonna your love leaves me raised, or just really lame innuendo.
Well, you're talking about the guy who wrote the song, Mama's got a squeeze box she wears on her chest. And
right. I hate that song too.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is that in this song, Pete Townshend says that he's a Taurus. He's like, what are you going to do with me? I'm a Taurus, and you take something.
Take the horn by the...
Take the bull by the horns. And I'm a Taurus, and so then I was conflicted. I was like, well, I hate this song, but it revealed that we're of a similar nature, me and Pete.
Astrology, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. This, I think, again, 5 years earlier, it could have gotten some major play on MTV, the radio, or whatever. It does answer the age-old question of whether Pete Townshend can play a traditional guitar solo. And because Pete is generally more of a rhythm guitar player. He's not the Jimmy Page type of, or Dave Gilmour type of 20-minute play the guitar as if it's your cock type of guitar solo type of player. But he does a decent guitar solo here. There's a vocal interplay that's going on after that guitar solo that I really, really liked. That if you are going to listen to the song, definitely check it out for that. And also for me, with my sense of humor,
you found the innuendo funny.
I have no problems with the innuendos, and yeah, I mean, I probably thought of a lot worse. I ripped off Space Mountain from Ric Flair for myself, so that's another story for a therapist, I guess. But let's move on to the next song here. It's the full version of Flame.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that this would be a good Celine Dion song, or but I found it.
It's schmaltzy, but
yeah,
it's a good type of schmaltzy, and for people that know me, I mean, they know primarily I'm into hard rock and metal and just loud stuff, but there is nothing like a good schmaltzy pop song. I grew up on the Monkees, for God's sake, so I know what a good schmaltzy pop song can do for you. And I again, Flame is not a classic. I'm not trying to say the Flame is going to be comparable to I'm a Believer or anything like that, but it's for a couple minutes of your time listening to this song, you end up with feeling a little good. I liked it. Again, not a classic, but I enjoyed it.
Good.
All right.
I really love the next one.
Meher Baba M5 Vivaldi.
Loved it.
Why did you love it?
I loved the accordion. I loved the synthesizer. It was fast. It was interesting. It was compelling. Like, I wanted to keep listening to it. Liked it.
I didn't really care for this. Again, it's similar to the other demo tracks that he had on here. It's I do prefer it. I do think it's kind of accentuates the radio play more, just like good music in a movie is supposed to do. Just gives you more emotion for the story it's trying to tell. I did think, that it went on a little bit, too long. I did like the church organ type of sound, with it. So it has its good aspects to it, but for me, again, this is probably one that that I'm generally just ignoring or skipping over to get to something else.
Interesting.
All right, so the next song, "Fake It."
I was so annoyed at this song, because I think this is absolutely the worst possible thing to say to someone, which is, I don't care if you pretend. To have feelings or whatever it is that you're faking, that you ought to fake it. I don't care if you fake it. So I was a little distracted by how much I was annoyed by the lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the song itself, again, yet another song that 5 years previous could have not necessarily topped the charts or anything like that, but it wasn't made for 1993 in music. To your point, the lyrics are Townshend being a little on the pretentious side again. I will not disagree with anybody that would claim that Townshend is pretentious at times. I think the song is more kind of taken in character of Ray, more of a comment on the artist having to fake a certain thing for fake a feeling for the audience, as a musician. One thing I've always wondered too about musicians that have that long of a career, how do they keep interest in playing songs that when they're 70 they wrote in their 20s, and I think this kind of sort of addresses that a little bit, but overall, meh. It's all right, but you won't be remembering this song after the album is done. And one other thing, Pete Townshend scatting should never happen.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
All right, the next track is a reprise of Now and Then.
Yeah, I liked the song the first time. I liked it the second time.
Yeah, not much more to say about it since it's essentially just taking the chorus again. It does have, the radio play does have a little bit of an Easter egg to the Who song Pictures of Lily. Because at this point, Ray High, it's near the end of the story. His albums are topping the charts again, and he's talking with fans. And, one of the fans he writes goes, "Dear Lily, thank you for the pictures. You look really nice." And, it's just a throwback to that Who song.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the next song, the demo to Baba O'Reilly.
Well, this was the demo to Baba O'Reilly. Like, it's the Baba O'Reilly theme, kind of crazy organ, super fast.
Yeah, this demo here, if you wanted to compare it to the song that came out on Who's Next, this is actually they replaced this part of the synthesizer with a violin at the end. So it's not the iconic synthesizer that you hear at the beginning of Baba O'Reilly. It's something that was intended for the end of the song. Again, the same critiques I had apply here as they do to the other demos. It did accentuate the radio play. It did make my interest in the radio play. I had more emotion towards it because that's what good music's supposed to be in a story like this. But on its own, I don't know if I would. I would rather listen to the original Bob O'Reilly than anything else.
Well, sure.
Yeah, and last but not least, the last song on the album is the reprise of English Boy.
And I felt similarly lackluster about it the second time as I did the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I wrote, it's the same song, slightly expanded. Thinking of it like a play, it's the closing song of a play. Pete is taking on the role of Ray High at this point and just kind of doing a summary of everything he learned. But what I do love more than anything is there's a bit of audio at the end where Ray High is just commenting, and where he says, "What happened to the truth? What happened to the dream? What happened to all that lovely hippie shit?" I love that. I mean, it's a sarcastic way to end the album, because I think Pete does realize that a lot of the high hopes that people had for what music could do in the 60s were not realized. But yeah, overall, one of my favorite albums. Again, apart from Now and Then, it doesn't have a true standout classic song, but I don't necessarily demand that from an album. When I listen to an album, I want to listen to it from start to finish and enjoy the whole thing, not just 2 or 3 tracks and then filler. So
this album would not make my top 100 album lists, but I thought it was really interesting. The second time I listened to it, I was much more interested in trying to follow the story and also just appreciate the songs and listen to the music, and it wasn't a terrible experience the second time through.
Well, and of course, for people that may be listening to the show for the first time here, the purpose that we're doing this here is not even necessarily to critique an album, but music is a way to get to know people. And just because you did not enjoy the album doesn't mean you didn't get something from it, just because of me relating my experiences on why I liked it. So, and then vice versa, so
absolutely,
yeah. So that's Psychoderelict. There is a version of Psychoderelict that does not have the radio play, that just has the music. And Townshend fans, there was a podcast I actually found that I listened to last night, that kind of talks about it, that the Townshend fans are really kind of split on this album. There are some that love the radio play version of the album, and there are some that just enjoy the songs of the album, which, it's great that it's getting love by his fans, but kind of goes to show that at the end of the day, this was released at the wrong time. And I think while I did like the radio play aspect of it, I think it did kind of put a hindrance on the album. I mean, there's a reason not many people know about this album, and that's because unless you are a fan of The Who, a lot of this you're probably not gonna understand. It's if you have a cursory knowledge of everything that The Who has done, or Pete Townshend as a songwriter, you're going to get a lot more out of it, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much. One thing I forgot to mention too is that when I mentioned his work on guitar, before this album was made, he was actually doing a concert and borrowed one of Eric Clapton's Fender Stratocasters. Now, Eric Clapton is known for using the whammy board on, when he's doing a song, and that's that little bar that, for people that don't know, when the guitarist is playing, if you hit the whammy bar, you can make the note that you're trying to play bend, essentially. Now, Pete is famous for doing the windmill. Pete, with this guitar, did not anticipate that the whammy bar would be in a certain position. Did a windmill and impaled his hand. And they thought he was not going to be able to play guitar again.
Whoa.
But they were able to, he found that, with the money he has, he found the right surgeon. He was able to get back up and going, and in time to create this album right here. So anyway, that's it. That's another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy.
Oh my gosh, the episode's over?
It is over.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Thank you again for being on the show here.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I hope this is not the last time.
Anytime.
You
let me know.
Okay. Next week, like I said, we will be back with Kim's choice of Weird Al Yankovic's In 3D. which has a wrestling connection, by the way.
What doesn't?
Not much these days, unfortunately, but I'll just tell it here and I'll tell it again next week because I just love wrestling. The producer of In 3D is a gentleman by the name of Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer, if you know of him at all, you would know him from the 70s song Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo.
Oh, I know that song.
Yeah. He produced, but he ended up becoming a music producer. He produced In 3D, and Vince McMahon heard this album and thought, wow, I want to come up with an album with my wrestlers. Let's get the guy who worked with Weird Al Yankovic. So they got Rick Derringer in, and then Rick Derringer ended up producing an album called The Wrestling Album and wrote a song in there called Real American that became Hulk Hogan's theme song.
Oh my gosh.
So, small world.
Very small world.
And you can fit wrestling into anything. Oh, yeah. So with that, we will see you next week.
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the day is new. And I'll have more ideas for you. And you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.